Let's go ahead and figure out what value of x, or values, will make L and M here parallel to each other. So the very first thing is, let's look at what we're given. We're given the measure of these two angles here. And so let's go ahead and try to figure out what relationship they have. Well, looking over here, they're not same side interior. They're on alternate sides, but they're actually exterior angles. And I don't have that theorem over here. There actually is a theorem, but I'm going to use a little trick, and that's just vertical angles. And I'm going to kind of figure out what some of these other angles are first, and then see if there's a different plan of attack where I don't have to memorize as many theorems. And I know that this angle here is congruent to that angle. They are vertical angles. And so I know that the measure of this angle here must also be 3x plus 2 degrees. And then I also have vertical angles here and here. And so I know that this angle here is 4x minus 5 degrees. And I actually have two different kind of ways I could go about this, but I'm just going to notice that now I know that angle, let's call this angle 1 and angle 2 here. Well, those are alternate interior angles. Well, I know that alternate interior angles are congruent to each other. And I actually probably should have been using two lines here, but I now know that this angle is congruent to this angle. And so I can just set those two measurements equal to each other. I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Therefore, the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 2. And therefore, I can plug in the values for them. The measure of angle 1 is 4x minus 5 degrees. And I know that has to equal the measure of angle 2, which is 3x plus 2 degrees. We can just drop the degree sign on both sides and go ahead and solve for x. So now we have that x equals 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that back into the diagram here and confirm that all of these angles are supposed to be congruent to each other. And let's just confirm that that's true. Great. That's 23 degrees. I know that these are congruent as well. So everything's congruent. I can feel confident that the solution to the question, for what value of x is L parallel to M? Well, if x is equal to 7, then I know that the alternate interior angles are congruent to each other, and therefore that I know that L is parallel to M. Again, one thing I will point out is clearly this angle here is obtuse, and it's coming out to 23 degrees. Now, does that mean my answer is wrong? Well, I should think back to when I drew this diagram. Was I trying to draw it to scale? Did I have an idea as to whether or not this angle here was going to be obtuse or acute? And I know that I didn't. So this diagram is clearly very wrong, but it really was just a place for me to put my thoughts. So always keep in mind that if you're given a diagram you know is to scale, you can use that to check your solution. If you're just drawing a random diagram with very little information about what the angle should be, clearly you shouldn't use that to determine if your answer makes sense.